Welcome to Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda. All this week in the run-up to Easter, we're looking at some of the people who feature in the Easter story, the Easter people. And we're talking today about Pontius Pilate, the politician. Because in the same week that Jesus entered Jerusalem, possibly even the same day of Palm Sunday, but certainly in the same week, Pontius Pilate would have entered Jerusalem in his capacity as the governor of Judea. At a time, the Passover festival, which was always a time of heightened religious and political tensions. And Brian Zand has actually made clear the wonderful contrast that occurs between the politician arriving into the city from the west, riding on a mighty horse, a war horse with trumpets sounding and military banners and plenty of eagles, because people who resort to violence always seem to like eagles with their politics for some reason. And then coming from the east, on a donkey, you had another man coming, not this time to warlike trumpets, but to shouts of children, and not accompanied by military banners or eagles, but accompanied by palm branches. So you have this contrast between Pilate, the politician, and Jesus, the Savior. Pilate was a politician on the make. As many people have done in politics before and since, he basically advanced his own career by hitching his wagon to a star. And the star that Pilate hitched his wagon to was a guy called Sejanus. And Sejanus was basically the shadowy figure behind the scenes during the reign of the Emperor Tiberius. He was the kingmaker. He was the one who was pulling all the strings while Tiberius was emperor. And Sejanus actually overreached himself, and it became suggested that as he eliminated all potential rivals in the empire, including Tiberius's own son, it actually reached the point where people openly were saying perhaps Sejanus was going to make himself emperor. And so Tiberius brought him down and had Sejanus executed. And all the people who had basically ridden to power on his coattails began to be picked off one by one. And one of those was Pontius Pilate. Pilate was summoned back to Rome, and before he even got back to Rome, Tiberius had died, and there was a new emperor of even greater cruelty in his place, Caligula. And rather than face Caligula, Pilate committed suicide. And there's even a legend that they had problems burying his body. Now, I think this is probably just a legend, but apparently they said that wherever they tried to bury his body or even put it in a river or whatever else, there was all kinds of storms and tornadoes and all kinds of stuff like this. And so eventually the legend says they carted his body off to the Alps and buried it up there on the top of a mountain where there wasn't going to cause any problems, because it's always storms up there anyway. And that, in fact, there is a mountain named after Pontius Pilate in the Swiss Alps, of all things. But I want to make this point, that politicians still hitch their wagons to stars. They still try to ride to power on somebody else's reputation. Sometimes they even hitch their wagons to the star of the man who rode the donkey. Sometimes politicians try to gain power by claiming that they are somehow advancing the cause of Christ, by promising political power and prestige to the church. And sadly, some Christians seem to be more attracted by the power of the man on the military horse than they are attracted by the example of humility and servanthood of the man who rode the donkey into Jerusalem. And so today, let's learn a lesson from Pontius Pilate, the politician. You know, if you could have contrasted in that Easter week, that first Easter week, if you could have contrasted Pilate's entrance into Jerusalem with the entrance of Jesus, to be honest, Jesus' triumphal entry would not look very triumphal compared to Pilate's. In fact, it would look quite comic and pitiful. And yet today, it's Jesus that we worship. And today, this Easter week, it's Jesus that we honor. And the only reason Pontius Pilate is remembered at all is because of the bit part that he plays in the story of Jesus as one of the Easter people. Let's make sure that we are following the Son of God, not the example of the politician. Join us again tomorrow for another Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda, when we're going to look at another one of the Easter people who feature in that Easter story.